Hi everybody, I'm Trey.
Hi everyone, I'm Brandon, and we're with the Flying Lap. We're going to be taking footage and letting everybody see what goes on at some of these SCCA time trials and how we go through our days, our events, and what the competition seems to be for each event.
Some of the things that we'll focus on is we plan on doing driver interviews, we'll do vehicle overviews and highlights and stuff like that, and we'll also be tracking season points just so you can feel involved with the competition. Today with us we have Ryan Dussex, and I'll let him introduce himself in a bit, but he's here to talk to us a bit about what is time trials and how this thing works.
You're one of the main directors of the program, aren't you?
Yep, I am the SCCA Time Trials Competition Director, and so I basically oversee the day-to-day operations at the event, and I also help structure kind of how our competition format will be.
I kind of want to start off with like a brief overview of what is time trials with the SCCA, kind of where do we compete, classes, car classes. Obviously not every car is the same, so you want to talk a bit about all of that for us?
Absolutely. Time trials, you're basically competing for your fastest lap in your class, and there's multiple cars on track at the same time, but everyone is competing against themselves and against the clock. So that's kind of the nice thing about time trials and time attack, is it's really more geared towards you're shooting for your fastest laps, so the safety barriers are quite a bit easier to get around opposed to wheel-to-wheel racing.
I think a big question for a lot of people is if you're a beginner and this is the first day you're coming into something like this, what do we need to know? What do we need to show up with? Is this safe? Do I need to bring a helmet?
Absolutely. So time trials is definitely, SCCA time trials is definitely geared towards your novice, and it works all the way up through, your very experienced drivers. The fun part about SCCA time trials is it's a pretty low barrier of entry as far as the experience that you need coming into this event. You need a safe car. So by a safe car, I mean a car that, the battery is secure, your positive terminals are covered, your wheel bearings and the condition of like your braking system and stuff is in good condition and stuff like that. It's also, as far as from a safety perspective goes, you could come out in your stock car that maybe you drive to the grocery store, or maybe it's something that you kind of have as a passion project that's got fully functioning safety.
So do you feel like for these new folks that are coming out, I've got a stock vehicle or something like that, does it make sense to even join? Should I mod my car all the way? Can I even be competitive if I come out and race?
My professional opinion, and just anybody's opinion on this, it's kind of like any new sport, especially if you're new to it. If you take the equipment you have and you start with that and you decide, okay, what level do I want to get into this? I don't want anybody to get discouraged thinking that they have to build like a fully prepared max car or an unlimited car before they can even put their first foot out onto the event.
Just showing up a lot of times is a big step for everybody. And I think, like you said, bringing a helmet, and I personally would recommend changing your brake fluid out.
Yep.
I think we've all kind of learned that lesson over the years.
Absolutely.
It becomes a big issue.
One of the things that you mentioned too, like for coming out, there are different classes as well. So if you have a completely stock car, there's a place for you to be competitive with other cars. Or if you have a completely decked out, gutted race car, there's a spot for you.
What are the classes?
So we have, basically, it's broken down into 4 classes right now. We've got Sport, which is kind of your lightly modified and stock cars. And then you've got Tuner, which is going to be what people typically think of like your basic full bolt-ons, more elaborate suspension setups, coilovers.
Street cars.
Yeah, street cars, yep. Then you have Max, is where you kind of you step all that stuff up. Now we're talking built engines, aftermarket turbos, aero, like light aero, and then and even fancier suspensions. Then we have Unlimited, and of course Unlimited is definitely tailored towards your gutted, stripped, caged, ready to go full race car, and there's still street car elements in each one of those car classes.
And then we divide each class up a little bit as well. We've got Tuner 1, 2, 3, 4.
Absolutely.
Same with Max.
Yep.
So these classings help us put people where they need to be, so you're not just getting blown away maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we think of it as the bigger the number next to your class, maybe the slower your car, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
We do something called indexing, don't we?
Yes. So each of the 4 primary classes, Sport, Tuner, Max, and Unlimited, have each one of their little segment classes: Unlimited 1, Unlimited 2, Max 1 through 5, and so on. So essentially what I did, and it's not a perfect system, and it's really hard to build a perfect system when you have the variety of tracks that we have here in Colorado, but essentially the way the index system is, it's kind of like a golf handicap. So every top car, like say a Max 1 car or a Tuner 1 car or a Sport 1 car, is a no handicap time. So they're basically the 100% index time. And then each class that goes down below it, Max 2, Max 3, or Tuner 1, Tuner 2, Tuner 3, etc., each one of them have kind of like a percentage benefit, essentially, depending on how slow the cars are. So it kind of helps bring the competition closer together, because it's a little bit wonky. It's kind of hard at first, but we tried to make the percentages easier and round percentages, and we have it set up like that so that everyone in Tuner is competing against everyone in Tuner, and everyone in Sport and everyone in Max. They're all competing against each other in those 4 primary classes. So at the end of the day, there's going to be 3 winners for Unlimited, 3 winners for Max, 3 winners for Tuner, and etc.
Well, Ryan, I think I had one more question for you.
Okay.
And what's the main difference between these 4 tracks we're going to be hitting this season? What's so great about each one?
All right, so we've got the 4 tracks. I would say the best thing, my personal favorite track, even though we're at PPI right now, is probably High Plains Raceway.
I would have to agree. Yeah.
High Plains Raceway is about, I think it's like 2.2 miles or so.
Yep.
It's
I think that's about right.
like 15, 16 turns or so.
About 2-minute lap times.
Yep, 2-minute lap times, a fast lap time there. It's also a really fast track. So if you're kind of in that thrill-seeking kind of feel, it's definitely a great track where you get to stretch your legs out on a couple parts of the track there.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, you agreed with him that was probably your favorite track as well. Why is that?
Oh, I think it's the biggest straight. I think I go the fastest there, and it's probably got some of the fastest sweeping corners, as well as just it's beautiful out there. You get those rolling hills, some really tight corners too.
Elevation changes make it really
It's just beautiful
interesting.
to be there, honestly.
Yeah. Just because it says High Plains doesn't mean that it's
flat. Yeah.
It's got the most elevation change, I think, of all our tracks, and I think it's probably the most maintained concrete aspect of it.
It's a good track to learn on, though. I mean, I chose that track specifically as the first open lapping or even HPDE. Just felt safe.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the places where you could potentially run off, there wasn't like this big scary
not a wall
or
everywhere.
anything like that. Like here at PPIR or even in Pueblo, turning on turn 10 into the drag strip, there's that wall off to the left-hand side.
Terrifying, actually.
And it's a little nerve-wracking. So, but I think now that I've been to La Junta as a first-timer, like that's a great place to go as well.
I think it's got the easiest offs. I mean, most of the offline parts of the course are still paved, so it's not like you're just getting yeeted out into the shrubberies, So, and then we'll just leave that into La Junta. La Junta is, I think that's 1.1 miles or something around there.
It's
our
I think
shortest track, right?
1.2.
7 turns.
And there's 7 turns, yeah.
And turns 1, 2, and 3 are almost the same turn.
Yes, one big swoop.
One big sweeper.
And then you have a big chicane.
Yep, and then you have kind of a chicane. It's a real simple track, which is, I think, really a good thing. One of the reasons I think it's a good thing is it's easier when you're working on your skills. You get to readdress that situation over like a lot quicker, and you can work on stuff like, okay, I'm going to work on this, 4 and 5, and you can work on that, and then a minute later or less, you're back to that section.
Okay.
So I think to give people at home an idea of like what's considered a fast time at across these tracks, a fast time at High Plains. If you're breaking 2 minutes, you're really doing something out there at High Plains. At La Junta, I think if you're in the 52s, 53s, you're really scooting out there.
Yeah.
That's a fast time, and so that just gives you an idea of how often you might be coming around back on these same features.
You get twice the amount of laps.
Even a slower car or like your sport cars and stuff are going to be in that 101, 102 range. So they're making, in a 15-20 minute session, you're getting through there easily around 10-15 times, whereas at High Plains, a 10-15 minute session might get you around there 5 times.
Yeah.
So 5 laps. So it's a good track for that, and it's safer.
All right, I think we're going to move on to where we're at right now, Pikes Peak International Raceway.
Yep, so Pikes Peak International Raceway is 1.3 mile roval. So what's really kind of unique about this track is that they use sections of the actual old NASCAR track as part of the course. They're using basically 3 of the turns here are on the actual
2.5 maybe.
Yeah, 2.5. Yeah, 2.5 of the turns are on the actual oval part of the NASCAR bank, and then they've got a pretty flat and pretty technical, deceiving infield with lots of curbs. Very rewarding if you're brave on the curbs. Big sweepers. It's 1.3 miles and I believe 9 turns here is what they consider it. But it's I think for a lot of people it's one of the more intimidating tracks, especially coming out. As you can see, the wall behind us has been touched a few times, and it's not saying that everybody has to hit the wall, but it's one of those things that I think intimidates a lot of people coming into this kind of new, kind of getting that feel of what their car can really do when you're up against the wall.
No, that's how I felt for sure. Like, I mean, I don't even know if I really consider what I can run out here a really fast time. And so much of the time that is to be made is around this roval. It's just being able to be brave and kind of hold through that corner.
And the bump.
And the bump, the dip that's just over the tunnel there. Right?
Yeah, you've got the dip here. And we didn't mention it, but we got the jump at La Junta.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
I would call it a bump. I mean, it's not a jump; it's a bump.
It's like the track at La Junta is going uphill, and then it's not.
Yeah.
But it's not a dip though, and that's what we have here. I mean, because it's a NASCAR oval, there is a tunnel. And typical of tracks with tunnels, you're going to have like basically runoff depressions, from the moisture and stuff. So there is the dip here.
And then our last one we've got is Pueblo Motorsports Park.
Yep. That track is, what's that track, 2.2 miles?
It's close to the same length as High Plains, but it's only got 10 turns, so there's more turns at High Plains. I feel like the big difference between the two, my personal opinion, is High Plains is a track that you really attack the corners. You're really, really after it. And Pueblo, to me, it just feels like you need to have so much more finesse with stringing corner to corner together, like especially when you're going like
1 into 2 and
1 to 2, 2 to 3, and then especially going doing the 6A, 6B into 7. Like if you mess up a little bit on 6A, 6B's ruined, and you might also botch your hairpin at 7. So, but I have a really hard time deciding if that or High Plains is my favorite now. High Plains was when I first started, but I don't know anymore.
The one thing I'll say and add to that as far as the track layout is I feel like the school line is pretty obvious and also fast at High Plains, but there's still those nuggets of like speed that you can find. But I think the school line at Pueblo, albeit obvious, is not even close to the fast line. Like because of it really feels like that track, they basically drew the track out and it was awesome, and then they laid it out over the topography, and it wasn't really engineered around the topography, so there's parts of the track where it's an off, it's like a banked off, like part of it's not banked. So, turn 1, for example, you get on that upper third, and if you got up there, like on the school line doing your out in out, you're going to be way off the line.
Yeah, you got a lot off again halfway through that corner, actually.
So that I'd almost venture to say that from like a beginner's perspective, that is probably the most technical course I think we have.
That would make a lot of, I feel like I could make up a lot of time or lose a lot of time very easily there.
Yeah, it definitely takes rhythm and comfort, like getting through like 5 and 6A and 6B and then like being patient around 7. I think it takes that like relax, don't do it.
Just hold it together.
And we'll get through it. Yeah. Isn't that how this song goes?
The last turn on that track over there, it changes every time we hit it too, because it's a drag strip. Sometimes the cone's a little bit further in or out, depending on the condition of the drag strip.
10,
and it's definitely one of those tracks. I would be confident driving at least 7/10 at all the tracks in Colorado, with the exception of turning onto the front stretch at PMP. I will say, I always tell people, if there's enough water that you feel like you need a windshield wiper on your, use a windshield wiper on your car, you need to be backed way off coming onto the front stretch.
All that rubber that's laid down right there is very slippery.
Yep, when it gets wet.
So I guess that's good for the tracks. Our first event is going to be coming up here April 29th through May 1st, right?
And it's
the 29th
also
is
a class session.
The 29th is the class session,
Yep, so that Friday we're hosting a performance/TT school. So there'll be the road racer licensing will start in the first part of the day, where they talk about basically the basics of SCCA and basics of racing and flags and things like that. and then the road racers will split off from the time trialers, and then I'll take off with the time trialers, and we'll talk about, you know, corner strategy. We'll talk about driving. We'll cover the basics if we need to, but we'll also kind of dive in kind of more that intermediate like approach to time attack and apply to La Junta.
So it'd be a great day if you're just starting to get into this and wondering a little bit about it to show up to this event.
Absolutely. It's not going to be super boring for anyone who has experience, and it's not going to be overwhelming for someone who's brand new into it. So
It's a good mix for sure. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I think that was a lot to go through, but we got through it. Well, thank you for your time, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you guys are great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.